The night was quiet except for the occasional car speeding down the lonely suburban street. The Mitchells lived in a house that seemed perfect. White fences, a neatly trimmed lawn, and a warm glow from the living room window. To outsiders, Marcus and Evelyn Mitchell were an ideal couple. They had been married for 10 years, had two beautiful children, and a home most people could only dream of. But what lay beneath was anything but perfect. Their marriage was open, by Marcus's request. He had convinced Evelyn that love should not be bound by rules, that desire should be explored freely. At first she resisted, but over time she learned to accept it. Maybe it was the way Marcus spoke about freedom, or maybe it was because she didn't want to lose him. Whatever the reason, she agreed. It was a decision that would lead to death. On the night of September 12, 2024, at precisely 11:47 p.m., the New York Police Department received an anonymous 911 call. A woman's muffled screams were heard through the phone before the call disconnected. The dispatcher immediately traced the call to 1087 Willow Creek Drive, the Mitchell residence. Within minutes, a patrol car arrived. The responding officers, Detectives Charles Vega and Mia Porter, were the first on the scene. What they found inside the house was disturbing. Evelyn Mitchell lay on the floor of the master bedroom, her body barely covered with a torn silk robe. Her wrists were bruised, and there were deep marks around her neck, suggesting she had been strangled. The room smelled of sweat, alcohol, and something else, something rotten. Marcus Mitchell sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. His face was streaked with tears. "She's dead," he whispered when the officers entered. "They killed her." Detective Vega crouched beside Evelyn's body. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, no blood trails leading outside. The house was perfectly intact, except for the broken woman lying lifeless on the floor. "Who did this?" Vega asked, his voice calm but firm. Marcus lifted his head slowly. His blue eyes were red with tears. "Two men," he said. "They broke in. I was tied up. I couldn't stop them." His voice cracked. "They raped her, and then they killed her." Mia Porter, the younger detective, scanned the room. "Where were the kids?" she asked. "At my parents' house for the weekend," Marcus replied. Something about his story felt off. Vega had been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He had seen men lie before. Their eyes darted around, their voices wavered, their hands fidgeted. Marcus was doing none of that. He was too composed. "We'll need a full statement," Vega said. "Take your time," Mia added, her tone softer. Marcus nodded, his body trembling. "I just want whoever did this to pay." The forensic team arrived, taking samples and dusting for prints. Officer Jake Collins, one of the best crime scene analysts, checked the surveillance footage from the house. "Sir," Collins said, walking up to Vega, "the security cameras were turned off an hour before the attack." Vega raised an eyebrow. "Convenient." "Yeah," Collins agreed. "Also, the front door was locked. No signs of forced entry. Maybe the intruders forced Marcus to turn off the cameras and open the door," Mia suggested. "Maybe," Vega said, unconvinced. Then came the most chilling discovery. When Collins analyzed Evelyn's phone, he found a video file, one that had been deleted but recovered through forensic software. It was footage from inside the bedroom. The video started with Evelyn sitting on the bed, her wrists tied to the headboard. She looked terrified. Marcus was in the corner holding a camera. Two men, their faces hidden by ski masks, entered the frame. Evelyn pleaded with them, her voice shaking. "Please, don't do this." But Marcus didn't stop recording. Instead, he laughed. And as the men attacked her, he whispered, "That's my girl." Vega felt sick as he watched the footage in his office later that night. He paused it, rubbing his temples. The case had just taken a turn. He called Mia over. "Watch this," he said. She did. By the end, her face was pale. "Jesus," she whispered. "Marcus Mitchell isn't a grieving husband," Vega said. "He's a monster. But why would he kill her after setting this up?" Mia asked. "Maybe he didn't," Vega replied. "Maybe one of his masked friends did. Or maybe, just maybe, Evelyn had fought back." Either way, Marcus Mitchell was no longer a victim. He was their prime suspect. Detective Charles Vega sat in the dimly lit interrogation room, staring at the crime scene photos laid out before him. Evelyn Mitchell's lifeless body, the bruises on her wrists, the deep red marks around her throat, the terror frozen in her eyes. But the most disturbing piece of evidence wasn't in the photos. It was on the recovered video. Marcus Mitchell, the grieving husband, had filmed his wife's brutal assault, and he had enjoyed it. Vega tapped a pen against the table as he replayed Marcus's statement in his mind. Two masked intruders, a sudden home invasion, tied up, helpless, forced to watch. The door creaked open, and Detective Mia Porter walked in, holding a thick case file. Forensics report just came in, she said, dropping the folder onto the table. You're gonna love this. Vega opened the file and scanned the findings. His jaw tightened. No foreign DNA? None, Mia confirmed. No hair, no fingerprints, no fluids that don't belong to either Evelyn or Marcus. Vega exhaled. So these masked intruders didn't leave a single trace? Not a damn one, Mia said, crossing her arms. Either they were ghosts, or they never existed. Vega shut the file and leaned back in his chair. We need to bring Marcus in. Now Marcus Mitchell sat across from the detectives, his hands folded on the metal table. His face was lined with exhaustion, but there was something in his eyes, something cold. Mr. Mitchell, Vega began, his voice steady. We've been reviewing the evidence. Marcus nodded, his expression unreadable. And Vega slid the forensic report toward him. We found no foreign DNA in your house, no signs of forced entry, no struggle except for Evelyn's. And then there's this. He turned the laptop toward Marcus and hit play. The video started. Evelyn on the bed, tied up. Marcus standing in the corner, recording. The masked men stepping into view. Marcus's voice whispering, "That's my girl." Marcus's eyes flickered toward the screen, then back to Vega. His face remained calm. Too calm. Care to explain? Vega asked. Marcus leaned back in his chair and let out a slow breath. It's not what it looks like. Oh, really? Mia scoffed. Because it looks like you recorded your wife getting assaulted. Marcus finally showed emotion. He laughed, a low, humorless chuckle. It was a game, he said. Vega narrowed his eyes. A game? Marcus nodded. Evelyn and I, we had certain interests in the bedroom. That video, it was staged, a role play. We recorded things sometimes. Mia's face twisted in disgust. You expect us to believe your wife wanted this? Marcus shrugged. She didn't always like it at first, but she played along. I have other videos. If you check my phone, you'll see. Vega clenched his jaw. Then why was she murdered? That's what I want to know. Marcus snapped, suddenly angry. I told you, 2 men broke in. I was tied up in the other room. By the time I got free, she was gone. Vega stared at him for a long moment. The lies were stacking up. After the interrogation, Vega and Mia sat in their office, piecing together the timeline. Let's say Marcus is telling the truth about recording their games, Mia began hesitantly. That still doesn't explain why Evelyn was murdered. Vega rubbed his chin. Maybe she wanted out. Mia raised an eyebrow. Out? Vega leaned forward. What if she told Marcus she didn't want to play anymore? What if she wanted to leave him? Mia considered it. That would give him motive. Vega nodded. And maybe those masked men weren't strangers. Maybe they were people Marcus knew. Mia's stomach twisted at the thought. Jesus. Vega grabbed his coat. We need to dig deeper into Marcus's life. Friends, business partners, anyone he might have trusted with his darkest secrets. Mia nodded. I'll get started on phone records. Vega pulled out his keys. And I'll pay a visit to Evelyn's best friend, because somewhere, buried beneath the lies, was the truth, and he was going to find it. Detective Charles Vega parked his unmarked car in front of a modest brownstone in Brooklyn. The woman he was about to meet was Evelyn Mitchell's closest friend, Claire Bennett. She had called the station earlier that day, saying she had something important to share. Vega knocked on the door. Moments later, Claire answered, her face pale and lined with exhaustion. Detective Vega? She asked. He nodded. Mind if we talk? Claire hesitated but then stepped aside. The apartment was small but cozy. Photos of Claire and Evelyn together lined the walls, smiling at a beach, holding cocktails at a rooftop bar, dressed up for what looked like a wedding. She was my best friend, Claire said softly, leading Vega to the couch. I still can't believe she's gone. Vega sat across from her. Claire, you said you had something important to tell me. She nodded, gripping her hands together. It's about Evelyn and Marcus. Vega leaned in. What about them? Claire hesitated. Their marriage wasn't as open as Marcus made it seem. Vega raised an eyebrow. Explain. Claire took a deep breath. At first, Evelyn went along with it because she loved Marcus. But over the past year, she changed. She started hating it. She told me she felt trapped. Vega frowned. Trapped how? Claire swallowed hard. Marcus wasn't just into watching her with other men. He wanted control. He would pick who she was with, where it happened, even what she wore. If she refused, he'd punish her. Punish her how? Vega asked, his voice dark. Claire's eyes filled with tears. With sex. Rough, humiliating sex. He made her beg, made her feel like she owed him for everything. She was scared of him, detective. Vega clenched his fists under the table. She was planning to leave him, Claire continued. She told me she was done. She was going to take the kids and file for divorce. Vega's heart pounded. There it was. Motive. And Marcus knew? Claire nodded. I think so. A few weeks ago, she said he'd been acting different, watching her more closely, checking her phone. She even asked me to hold on to some documents, just in case. Vega's mind raced. What kind of documents? Claire stood up, walked to a drawer, and pulled out a thick envelope. She handed it to Vega. He opened it and found a draft of a divorce petition, citing emotional and sexual abuse, bank statements showing large transfers from their joint account to a private one under Evelyn's name, a restraining order application she had started but never submitted. Vega's stomach turned. Evelyn had been trying to escape, and Marcus Mitchell had known. Back at the precinct, Detective Mia Porter sat at her desk, going through Marcus Mitchell's phone records. Something caught her eye. A series of calls made the night before Evelyn's murder. Same number. No name attached. She ran the number through the database. It belonged to a prepaid burner phone. Mia's pulse quickened. Who the hell was Marcus talking to? She pushed the report toward Vega as soon as he walked in. Marcus made 5 calls to this burner number the night before Evelyn died. Vega scanned the report. And no name? Mia shook her head. But that's not all. I pulled Marcus's financials. Look at this. She handed him another document. Marcus had withdrawn $15,000 in cash from his personal account 2 days before Evelyn's death. Vega narrowed his eyes. A payoff? Mia nodded. He hired someone. Vega. Vega's jaw tightened. Then we need to find out who. The next morning, a traffic cam provided the first major breakthrough. At 10:37 p.m. on the night of the murder, a black SUV had been seen leaving the Mitchell residence. The plates? Registered to Marcus Mitchell. But here's where it got interesting. The driver wasn't Marcus. It was a man in a ski mask. Vega and Mia exchanged looks. Marcus hadn't just been involved. He had been there. He had Detective Charles Vega sat in his office, staring at the grainy traffic cam footage frozen on his screen. The black SUV registered to Marcus Mitchell, the masked driver behind the wheel. Vega rubbed his temples. So, Marcus didn't just set this up, he was involved. Detective Mia Porter leaned against the desk. We just need to prove it. Vega exhaled. Let's break this down. We've got the video Marcus recorded of Evelyn's assault, Claire's statement about Evelyn wanting to leave, the divorce papers and bank transfers, Marcus's phone records linking him to a burner phone, the $15,000 cash withdrawal, the black SUV leaving his house the night of the murder. Mia nodded. It's all pointing to one thing. Marcus orchestrated this, Vega said, but he didn't do it alone. Now they had to find out who helped him. Mia had been running the burner phone's call records when she finally hit something, a second burner number, and this one had an identity attached to it. Name, Travis Boone, alias, Tebow criminal record, assault, aggravated robbery, drug trafficking. Vega's eyes darkened. So, Marcus had a guy for this? Mia nodded. And guess where Boone was last seen? She tossed another file onto the desk, a gas station security camera still Boone standing outside the same black SUV just an hour after Evelyn's murder. Vega grabbed his coat. Let's go get this son of a bitch. The warehouse on the south side of Brooklyn was dimly lit, the scent of oil and burnt metal hanging in the air. Boone sat in a folding chair, counting a stack of cash. Vega and Mia burst through the door, guns drawn. Travis Boone, Vega barked. NYPD, hands where we can see them. Boone's eyes darted to the side exit. Nope, Mia said, cutting him off. Try it, and you're getting tased. Boone cursed and put his hands up. As Vega cuffed him, he leaned in. You killed Evelyn Mitchell, didn't you? Boone smirked. Man, I don't know what you talking about. Vega yanked him up. Oh, you will, because once they had him in an interrogation room, they were going to break him. 2 hours later, Boone sat across from Vega and Mia, arms crossed, refusing to talk. Vega placed a photo of Evelyn's lifeless body in front of him. Boone barely flinched. Mia slid over a printout of his call log every time he talked to Marcus. Still, nothing. Then Vega played the gas station footage, Boone, the black SUV, the timestamp, an hour after Evelyn's death. Boone exhaled. Man, I don't know why you sweating me. Maybe I borrowed a car. That don't mean I killed nobody. Vega leaned forward. Here's the deal, Boone. We know Marcus paid you. We know you were at his house, watched his wife die, and now they were going to prove it. We know you drove that SUV away after Evelyn was dead. Mia added. And if you don't start talking, we're pinning all of this on you. Boone's jaw tightened. Mia pressed. You think Marcus Mitchell is going to take the fall for you? He's got money, lawyers. You're a street thug. He'll sacrifice you in a second. Boone sat silent for a long time. Then finally he muttered. That bastard set me up. Vega and Mia exchanged a look. Talk, Vega demanded. Boone exhaled. Yeah, I was there. But I wasn't the only one. Vega's heart pounded. Who else? Boone hesitated. Then he said a name that made Vega's blood run cold. Marcus's best friend. Detective Charles Vega leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. Marcus's best friend. He knew exactly who Boone was talking about. Jason Caldwell, a successful entrepreneur, a respected figure in Marcus and Evelyn's social circle, a man who had always seemed a little too close to Marcus. Vega glanced at Mia, who had already pulled up Caldwell's file. Jason Caldwell, she read aloud, 39, owns multiple businesses, including a private security firm. Vega narrowed his eyes. Security firm? Mia nodded. He has access to weapons, disposable muscle, and high-end surveillance equipment. Vega clenched his jaw. If Marcus needed someone to stage Evelyn's death, Jason was the perfect guy to call. Vega and Mia spent hours pulling Jason's financials, phone records, and surveillance footage from his office. And then they found it. A $15,000 deposit, the same amount Marcus had withdrawn, transferred to Jason's business account one day after Evelyn's death. Mia looked up from the computer. We just found our second killer. But that wasn't all. Jason had called Travis Boone's burner phone minutes after Marcus. And then, the real kicker. Jason's own car had been caught on a traffic cam, parked just a block away from the Mitchell residence, at the time of Evelyn's murder. Vega exhaled sharply. They were both there. Jason Caldwell's home was a modern mansion in the suburbs, the kind only money could buy. Vega and Mia pulled up at 7:45 a.m., just as the sun was rising. Mia knocked hard on the door. After a few moments, Jason answered, dressed in a robe, a cup of coffee in hand. His expression barely flickered. Detectives, to what do I owe the pleasure? Vega didn't waste time. We know you were at Marcus's house the night Evelyn was murdered. Jason blinked. Excuse me? Mia stepped forward. We have phone records, bank transactions, and camera footage placing you at the scene. Jason's grip on his coffee cup tightened. I think you're mistaken, Vega smirked. Then you won't mind coming down to the station for a chat. Jason hesitated. Then he bolted. Damn it! Vega shouted, taking off after Jason. Jason sprinted toward his garage, slamming the button to open the door. Mia was faster. She tackled him just as he reached his Mercedes, slamming him against the hood. Jason fought, elbowing her in the ribs. But Vega was right behind her. With a swift move, he yanked Jason's arm back and slapped the cuffs on him. Jason panted, glaring at them. You're making a mistake. Mia scoffed. No, Jason, you did. Vega pulled him toward the car. And now, you're going to pay for it. Jason sat across from Vega and Mia in the interrogation room, his once polished confidence cracking. Let's cut the crap, Vega said. We know Marcus hired you. Jason stayed silent. Mia tossed the bank transaction in front of him. 15 grand, Jason, from Marcus. Right after Evelyn died. Jason swallowed hard. Vega leaned forward. Tell us the truth, and maybe we can cut you a deal. But if you sit there playing dumb, we'll make sure you never see the outside of a prison cell again. Jason exhaled, rubbing his face. Then finally he muttered, Marcus planned everything. Mia's heart pounded. Explain. Jason hesitated. Then he broke. He told me Evelyn was leaving him. Said she was trying to take the kids, the money, everything. Vega clenched his fists. He asked me to scare her, Jason continued. Just rough her up a little. He said he'd pay me to make sure she never left. Mia's stomach twisted. And the assault? Jason looked away. That wasn't the plan. Vega's voice was ice. Then whose idea was it? Jason exhaled shakily. Marcus. He changed his mind. Said scaring her wasn't enough. Mia's hands tightened into fists. He wanted to watch, Jason admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. So he had Boone and another guy do it while he filmed. Silence filled the room. Jason's next words sealed Marcus's fate. After they were done, Marcus strangled her himself. Vega's blood ran cold. You saw him do it? Jason nodded. Yeah. Mia exhaled shakily. And you just let it happen? Jason swallowed. I tried to stop him, but Marcus enjoyed it. Vega and Mia exchanged a look. They had everything they needed. Now it was time to take Marcus Mitchell down. The precinct buzzed with energy as Detective Vega and Mia Porter prepared for the biggest arrest of their careers. They had everything: a confession from Jason Caldwell, Travis Boone's testimony, financial records, and the damning video Marcus had filmed himself. Now they just had to bring the bastard in. Marcus Mitchell's law office was located in the heart of Manhattan, a sleek, modern skyscraper with floor-to-ceiling windows and a team of expensive lawyers at his disposal. Too bad even they wouldn't be able to save him. Vega and Mia entered the reception area, their badges flashing. The young receptionist blinked. Can I help you? Mia didn't stop walking. Yeah, tell Marcus Mitchell the NYPD is here to arrest him for murder. Before the receptionist could react, Marcus himself appeared from his office, dressed in a tailored navy suit, calm and composed. Detectives, he greeted smoothly. To what do I owe the pleasure? Vega stepped forward. Marcus Mitchell, you're under arrest for the rape and murder of your wife, Evelyn Mitchell. A flicker of something, fear, crossed Marcus's face. Then he laughed. Detective, he said, shaking his head. That's a bold accusation. Vega's lip curled. We have video footage, a confession from Jason Caldwell, testimony from Travis Boone. Mia crossed her arms. Would you like us to list your bank transactions, too? Marcus's jaw tightened. The room fell silent. Then Vega grabbed his arm and spun him around. Hands behind your back. Marcus tensed, but he didn't resist as Vega snapped the cuffs on his wrists. For the first time, his voice lost its arrogance. You're making a mistake. Vega leaned in. No, Marcus, you did. As they led him out through the crowd of shocked employees, Mia smirked. Enjoy prison. 3 months later, the state of New York versus Marcus Mitchell was the biggest case in the city. The prosecution's evidence was ironclad. The video Marcus filmed of Evelyn's assault, the confession from Jason Caldwell, financial records linking Marcus to Boone's payment, phone records proving he orchestrated everything. Marcus's high-priced lawyers tried every trick in the book. They argued that Jason and Boone were framing him, that Marcus was a victim, that the video was taken out of context. But then the jury saw the footage. And everything changed. The look in Marcus's eyes as he watched Evelyn suffer, the cold amusement in his voice as he filmed her pain. By the time the prosecution was done, the jury looked sick. And when the verdict was read, the courtroom was silent, guilty on all counts. Marcus Mitchell was sentenced to life without parole. After the trial, Vega and Mia visited Evelyn's grave. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the cemetery. Mia placed a single white lily on the headstone. "She didn't deserve this," she murmured. Vega exhaled. "No, she didn't." For a moment they stood in silence. Then Vega turned to Mia. "Think we'll ever get used to this?" Mia gave a sad smile. Number. "And I hope we never do, because some cases should always be personal." The Mitchell case was over, but the echoes of Evelyn's murder still lingered. For Detective Charles Vega and Mia Porter, it was one of those cases that stuck with you, the kind that woke you up at night. Justice had been served. Marcus Mitchell was behind bars for life, but there was no victory in watching a woman's life get destroyed by the man who had vowed to love her. Still, the world moved on, and so did they. At Rikers Island, Marcus Mitchell was no longer the powerful attorney who had once controlled his own fate. Now he was just another inmate, a disgraced man trapped inside a 6 by 8 foot cell. Word of his crimes had spread fast. Even hardened criminals despised men who hurt women. It didn't take long before he got a taste of his own cruelty. Inmates who once feared Marcus in the courtroom now owned him in prison. One night he was found in his cell, beaten so badly he could barely speak. His former wealth and power, useless now. He had built his own hell, and now he had to live in it. Unlike Marcus, Jason Caldwell cut a deal. By cooperating with the prosecution, he avoided life and was sentenced to 20 years for conspiracy and accessory to murder. It wasn't freedom, but it was better than rotting forever. Still, prison had a way of making men face their demons, and Jason had plenty. At night, he heard Evelyn's screams, saw her face in his dreams, and when he woke up, sweating and shaking in his cell, he knew. Even after 20 years, he'd never be free. Travis Boone, the hired muscle, got the best deal of all. With full immunity, he walked away a free man, protected by the system in exchange for testifying. But freedom wasn't what he thought it would be. His face had been plastered all over the news. People called him a monster, a rapist, a murderer's accomplice. Bars refused to serve him. People spat at him in the streets. And one night, as he left a cheap motel, a hooded figure emerged from the shadows. A gunshot rang out. Travis Boone collapsed, his blood pooling on the pavement. No witnesses, no suspects. Just justice, served in the shadows. Back at the precinct, Vega and Mia closed the case file on Marcus Mitchell. It was over, but the job never stopped. Another case was already waiting, another victim needing justice. Mia stretched and smirked. "You ready for the next one?" Vega sighed, standing up. "Do we ever have a choice?" They grabbed their coats, walking out into the New York City night, where monsters still roamed and justice never slept.